In the grand theater of human interaction, there exists a rare breed of individuals who command attention without demanding it, who influence without manipulation, and who attract through the sheer force of their refined presence. These are not the loudest voices in the room, nor the most aggressive personalities, but rather those who have mastered what can only be described as the art of silent attraction, a sophisticated form of charisma that operates beneath the surface of conscious awareness. The concept of silent attraction is rooted in an ancient understanding of power dynamics that stretches back to the courts of Renaissance Italy, where Niccolò Machiavelli first observed the subtle mechanisms by which certain individuals could bend entire kingdoms to their will without ever raising their voice or drawing their sword. It is a form of influence that relies not on force or volume, but on the careful cultivation of personal magnetism through disciplined self-transformation. At its core, silent attraction represents the ultimate expression of self-mastery, the ability to destroy one's weaker impulses, fears, and limitations so completely that external forces lose their power to disturb or diminish one's essential nature. This transformation creates an almost gravitational effect around such individuals, drawing others into their orbit through an irresistible combination of mystery, confidence, and authentic presence. The journey toward mastering silent attraction begins with a fundamental recognition that most people live their lives in a state of unconscious reactivity, responding to external stimuli like leaves blown by the wind. They speak when they should listen, reveal when they should conceal, and react when they should respond. Their attention is scattered, their energy dissipated, and their true power remains dormant beneath layers of social conditioning and self-doubt. The first habit of those who possess silent attraction is the cultivation of strategic silence. This is not mere quietness or social withdrawal, but rather the development of what might be called purposeful restraint, the ability to hold space in conversations, to create pauses that others feel compelled to fill, and to speak only when their words can carry maximum impact. Strategic silence creates an aura of depth and mystery that draws people in, making them wonder what profound thoughts might be occurring behind that composed exterior. Consider the way certain individuals enter a room. They do not announce their presence with loud greetings or attention-seeking behaviors. Instead, they move with deliberate composure, their very calmness creating a kind of magnetic field that others notice even if they cannot articulate why. Their silence is not empty but full, pregnant with possibility and weighted with presence. This quality emerges only after one has learned to silence the internal chatter of insecurity and self-doubt that drives most people to fill every moment with unnecessary words. The second habit involves the mastery of emotional regulation, which forms the bedrock of all charismatic behavior. Those who possess silent attraction have learned to maintain their emotional equilibrium regardless of external circumstances. They do not allow the moods and reactions of others to dictate their internal state, nor do they permit temporary setbacks or provocations to disturb their fundamental composure. This emotional sovereignty creates an almost supernatural calm that others find both reassuring and intriguing. This emotional mastery manifests in subtle but powerful ways. When faced with criticism, they respond with curiosity rather than defensiveness. When encountering aggression, they remain centered rather than reactive. When offered praise, they accept it graciously without becoming inflated or dependent on external validation. Their emotional responses are conscious choices rather than automatic reactions, and this quality of deliberate responsiveness creates an impression of profound inner strength. The development of emotional sovereignty requires the systematic dismantling of what might be called the reactive ego, that part of the personality that feels compelled to defend, justify, or prove itself in every interaction. This ego dissolution is perhaps the most challenging aspect of developing silent attraction, as it requires confronting and transforming deeply ingrained patterns of behavior that most people consider essential to their identity. The third habit centers on the cultivation of genuine curiosity about others. Those who master silent attraction possess an almost uncanny ability to make others feel seen and understood, not through empty flattery or manipulation, but through authentic interest in the unique perspectives and experiences that each person brings. This curiosity manifests as quality attention, the kind of focused presence that makes people feel as though they are the only person in the room when they are speaking. This authentic curiosity stands in stark contrast to the self-absorbed listening that characterizes most social interactions, where people are simply waiting for their turn to speak, rather than genuinely engaging with what others are saying. The charismatic individual listens with their entire being, picking up on subtle emotional undertones, unspoken concerns, and hidden aspirations that others miss entirely. This quality of attention is magnetic because it fulfills a deep human need to be truly understood and appreciated. The fourth habit involves the development of what can be termed elegant boundaries, the ability to maintain one's standards and principles without being rigid or confrontational about them. Those who possess silent attraction have learned to say no with grace, to disagree without creating animosity, and to maintain their integrity without making others feel diminished. Their boundaries are firm but flexible, clear but kind, and they enforce them through their actions rather than their words. These elegant boundaries create respect because they demonstrate self-respect. People instinctively recognize when someone values themselves appropriately, neither too little nor too much, and this recognition generates a natural desire to match that level of respect. The charismatic individual does not need to demand respect because their very presence commands it through the consistent demonstration of their own standards and values. The fifth habit is perhaps the most counterintuitive, the strategic revelation of vulnerability. While this might seem to contradict the notion of silent attraction, the truth is that calculated vulnerability, shared at appropriate moments and in appropriate measure, creates profound connection and trust. The key lies in sharing vulnerabilities that demonstrate strength rather than weakness, challenges that have been overcome rather than current struggles that might create awkwardness or discomfort. This strategic vulnerability works because it humanizes what might otherwise seem like an intimidating level of composure and self-mastery. It creates what psychologists call the beautiful struggle effect, the recognition that someone's current strength was forged through overcoming genuine difficulties. When someone shares a story of past failure that led to current wisdom, or admits to a fear they have conquered, it creates an emotional bridge that others can cross to connect more deeply. The sixth habit involves the cultivation of physical presence and body awareness. Those who master silent attraction understand that communication is far more than words. It encompasses posture, gesture, movement, and the subtle energetic field that surrounds every human being. They have learned to move through space with intention and grace, to maintain eye contact that is intense but not aggressive, and to use their physical presence as an instrument of connection and influence. This physical mastery extends to the smallest details, the way they shake hands with appropriate firmness and duration, the way they position themselves in group settings to create optimal connection with others, the way they use gesture to emphasize points without overwhelming their message. Their body language is congruent with their words, creating an impression of authenticity and reliability that draws others in. Part 2. The 12 Pillars of Magnetic Presence. The seventh habit represents a sophisticated understanding of timing and rhythm in social interactions. Those who possess silent attraction have developed an almost intuitive sense of when to speak and when to remain quiet, when to advance and when to retreat, when to be present and when to create space. This social timing is similar to musical rhythm. It cannot be taught through rules alone, but must be felt and internalized through careful observation and practice. This mastery of timing manifests in countless subtle ways. They know when someone needs encouragement and when they need challenge, when a conversation should be deepened and when it should be allowed to remain on the surface, when humor is appropriate and when seriousness is called for. Their interventions in social situations are precisely calibrated to create maximum positive impact with minimum effort, like a skilled surgeon who knows exactly where and when to make each incision. The development of this timing sense requires what might be called social attunement, the ability to read the emotional and energetic currents that flow beneath the surface of every human interaction. This skill emerges naturally when one has learned to quiet their own internal noise sufficiently to perceive the subtle signals that others are constantly broadcasting. It is like learning to hear the individual instruments in a symphony rather than just the overall sound. The eighth habit involves the systematic cultivation of personal excellence across multiple domains of life. Those who master silent attraction understand that charisma is not a performance but an expression of genuine development and capability. They consistently work to improve themselves physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually, not to impress others but because they recognize that personal growth creates the foundation from which true influence flows. This commitment to excellence is visible in countless details. The way they maintain their physical health and appearance, the depth of their knowledge and the breadth of their interests, the quality of their work and the integrity of their character. They understand that people are attracted to competence and capability, and they have made the long-term investment necessary to develop these qualities authentically rather than simply projecting them superficially. The pursuit of excellence also involves what might be called unconscious competence, the ability to perform at high levels without appearing to strain or struggle. This creates an impression of natural ability and effortless mastery that others find both impressive and inspiring. Like a skilled athlete who makes difficult movements look easy, the charismatic individual has practiced the fundamentals of human interaction until they have become second nature. The ninth habit centers on the development of what can be termed selective availability. Those who possess silent attraction understand that scarcity creates value, and they carefully manage their time, attention, and energy to ensure that their presence is appreciated rather than taken for granted. They are fully present when they choose to be available, but they also maintain boundaries around their time and attention that prevent others from assuming unlimited access. This selective availability is not about playing games or creating artificial scarcity, but rather about recognizing that their most precious resources, time, attention, and emotional energy, must be invested wisely to create maximum impact. They understand that being available to everyone all the time actually diminishes their ability to be truly helpful to anyone, and they structure their lives accordingly. The practice of selective availability also involves learning to disappear gracefully when their presence is no longer needed or when they need time to recharge and reflect. They understand that maintaining their internal equilibrium requires periods of solitude and reflection, and they create these spaces without guilt or explanation. This pattern of presence and absence creates a natural rhythm that keeps others engaged and interested. The 10th habit involves the mastery of what might be called emotional alchemy, the ability to transform negative emotions and challenging situations into opportunities for connection and growth. When faced with conflict, criticism, or difficult personalities, those who possess silent attraction respond in ways that often leave others surprised and disarmed by their grace and wisdom. This emotional alchemy works because it operates from a fundamentally different premise than most people use in challenging situations. Instead of trying to win or be right, the charismatic individual seeks to understand and to find the kernel of truth or valid concern that usually exists within even the most hostile criticism. Instead of defending against attacks, they often acknowledge valid points and demonstrate their strength by accepting feedback gracefully. This approach has a profound effect on others because it violates their expectations and creates cognitive dissonance that must be resolved. When someone expects defensiveness and receives curiosity, when they anticipate argument and encounter understanding, their entire emotional state shifts. This shift often transforms adversaries into allies and critics into admirers, not through manipulation but through the genuine demonstration of a more evolved way of responding to challenge. The 11th habit represents perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of silent attraction, the ability to create what might be called emotional spaces that others want to enter and remain within. These are not physical spaces, but psychological and emotional environments characterized by safety, acceptance, growth, and possibility. People are drawn to these individuals because being around them feels different from ordinary social interactions, more real, more meaningful, and more enlivening. Creating these emotional spaces requires a combination of all the previous habits, but it also demands something more: the development of genuine love and appreciation for the full spectrum of human experience. Those who master this quality see beyond the surface presentations that people offer to the authentic human being beneath, and they respond to that deeper reality rather than to the social masks and defensive strategies that most people encounter. This ability to see and respond to people's highest potential rather than their current limitations creates a kind of transformative field around such individuals. People often report feeling more intelligent, more creative, more confident, and more capable when spending time with someone who possesses this quality. It is as if the charismatic person's belief in their potential calls forth aspects of themselves that they didn't know existed. The 12th and final habit involves what can only be described as the cultivation of personal mystery. This is not about being secretive or withholding information inappropriately, but rather about maintaining depth and complexity that cannot be easily categorized or completely understood. Those who master silent attraction always seem to have more layers beneath the surface, more stories that could be told, more experiences that have shaped them in intriguing ways. This personal mystery is maintained through several practices. They share themselves strategically, revealing different aspects of their personality and history at different times and to different people. They maintain interests and activities that others don't know about, creating a sense that there is always more to discover. They avoid the common mistake of trying to be completely understood or accepted by everyone, recognizing that some degree of mystery is essential for maintaining long-term interest and attraction. The cultivation of personal mystery also involves developing what might be called depth reserves, areas of knowledge, experience, and capability that are not immediately apparent but can be revealed when appropriate. These hidden depths create pleasant surprises for others and contribute to the sense that the charismatic individual is more complex and interesting than they initially appeared. Part 3. The transformation of the weak self. The journey toward mastering silent attraction ultimately requires confronting and transforming what Machiavelli might have called the weak self. That collection of fears, insecurities, reactive patterns, and limiting beliefs that prevent most people from accessing their natural charisma and personal power. This transformation is not a comfortable process, as it requires acknowledging and releasing aspects of identity that may have provided a sense of security, even as they limited growth and effectiveness. The weak self manifests in countless ways. The need to be right in every argument, the compulsion to fill every silence with words, the tendency to seek validation through others' opinions, the habit of making excuses when things don't go as planned, the inclination to blame external circumstances for internal states, and the pattern of avoiding challenging situations that might require growth or change. Perhaps most insidiously, the weak self operates through what might be called identity attachments, rigid self-concepts that must be defended and maintained regardless of whether they serve one's actual interests. These might include attachments to being seen as nice, smart, successful, victim, rebel, or any other role that provides a sense of identity, but limits authentic expression and response to situations. The process of destroying these weak patterns begins with developing what the ancient Stoics called objective self-observation, the ability to watch one's own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors with the same detached interest that one might observe the behavior of laboratory specimens. This requires creating sufficient internal space to step back from immediate reactive impulses and examine them with curiosity rather than identification. This self-observation reveals patterns that most people never notice because they are too identified with their thoughts and emotions to see them clearly. They discover that their anger often masks fear, that their criticism of others frequently reflects their own insecurities, that their need to control situations stems from feeling powerless internally, and that their social masks hide a deep longing for authentic connection and acceptance. The systematic dismantling of the weak self involves what might be called strategic discomfort, deliberately placing oneself in situations that challenge existing comfort zones and reveal areas where growth is needed. This might involve speaking up in situations where one would normally remain quiet, remaining silent in situations where one would normally speak, approaching conversations with curiosity instead of judgment, or maintaining composure in circumstances that would normally trigger reactive responses. Each successful navigation of these challenging situations builds what psychologists call self-efficacy, confidence in one's ability to handle whatever situations might arise. This confidence is not based on avoiding difficult circumstances, but on having repeatedly demonstrated the ability to respond to them skillfully. It creates a kind of inner security that cannot be shaken by external events because it is rooted in proven capability rather than favorable conditions. The transformation also requires developing new relationship patterns that support growth rather than maintaining comfortable stagnation. This often means reducing time spent with people who encourage victim thinking, drama, or other patterns that reinforce the weak self, while seeking out relationships with individuals who challenge and inspire higher levels of functioning. This relationship curation is not about becoming elitist or abandoning people who need support, but rather about recognizing that one's social environment profoundly influences personal development. Just as athletes train with others who push them to improve their performance, those seeking to develop silent attraction must surround themselves with people who model and encourage the qualities they wish to develop. The process of destroying the weak self also involves confronting what might be called core fears, the deep anxieties about rejection, failure, judgment, abandonment, or inadequacy that drive most of the dysfunctional patterns people develop. These fears usually originate in childhood experiences but continue to operate unconsciously in adult life, creating self-sabotage and limitation that prevent the expression of natural charisma and power. Confronting these core fears requires what might be called graduated exposure, deliberately engaging in activities that trigger these fears in manageable doses while maintaining conscious awareness of the fear response. This might involve public speaking for someone who fears judgment, setting boundaries for someone who fears rejection, taking creative risks for someone who fears vulnerability, or expressing authentic emotions for someone who fears vulnerability. Each successful encounter with these feared situations gradually reduces their emotional charge and reveals that the anticipated catastrophes rarely materialize. More importantly, it demonstrates that even when uncomfortable outcomes do occur, they can be handled skillfully rather than avoided defensively. This builds a fundamental trust in one's ability to navigate life's challenges that becomes the foundation of unshakable confidence. The emergence of silent attraction often follows what might be called the Phoenix process, a period of breakdown and reconstruction where old patterns are released and new capacities emerge. This process can be disorienting because it requires releasing familiar ways of being and operating from a place of uncertainty, while new patterns develop and stabilize. During this transition period, individuals often report feeling like they are between selves, no longer operating from their old reactive patterns but not yet fully established in their new way of being. This liminal space, while uncomfortable, is actually where the most profound transformation occurs. It is in this space of uncertainty that old limitations dissolve and new possibilities emerge. The completion of this transformation process results in what might be called integrated authenticity, the ability to respond to situations from one's deepest wisdom and strongest qualities rather than from conditioned patterns of fear and reaction. This authenticity is not about expressing every impulse or emotion, but rather about operating from conscious choice rather than unconscious compulsion. Those who have completed this transformation often report a profound sense of freedom, not the freedom to do whatever they want without consequences, but the freedom to choose their responses based on wisdom rather than reactivity. They no longer feel compelled to defend positions they don't truly hold, to maintain relationships that don't serve their growth, or to pursue goals that don't align with their authentic values and interests. This inner freedom creates the foundation from which silent attraction naturally emerges. When someone is no longer driven by the need to prove themselves, defend themselves, or hide themselves, their natural charisma can express itself without obstruction. They become like clear windows through which others can see something real and compelling, rather than mirrors that simply reflect others' projections and expectations. The ultimate expression of this transformation is what Machiavelli recognized as true invulnerability. Not the absence of challenges or opposition, but the inner strength to meet whatever arises with wisdom, grace, and effectiveness. Those who have destroyed their weak selves have removed the internal leverage points that others might use to manipulate or disturb them. They cannot be diminished by criticism because they have already acknowledged their limitations. They cannot be inflated by praise because they understand their worth comes from within. They cannot be controlled by threats because they have faced their fears and found them manageable. This state of inner invulnerability creates what might be called a sovereignty field, an energetic presence that communicates strength, wisdom, and reliability without words. People are naturally drawn to this quality because it represents everything they sense is possible within themselves but have not yet achieved. The charismatic individual becomes a living example of human potential realized, inspiring others not through words or actions but through the simple fact of their being. The maintenance of this transformed state requires ongoing practice and attention, as the patterns of the weak self can reassert themselves if vigilance is relaxed. However, once the fundamental transformation has occurred, maintaining it becomes more a matter of fine-tuning than major reconstruction. The individual has created new neural pathways, new habit patterns, and new ways of relating that support continued growth and effectiveness. In the final analysis, the art of silent attraction represents nothing less than the full actualization of human potential, the emergence of qualities that exist in seed form within every person, but are rarely developed to their full expression. Those who master these principles become beacons of possibility, demonstrating through their very presence what becomes available when someone commits fully to their own growth and transformation. Their influence extends far beyond their immediate interactions, creating ripples that touch countless lives in ways they may never fully know. They become part of the solution to humanity's collective challenges, contributing to the elevation of consciousness and capability that our world desperately needs. In destroying their weak selves, they become indestructible in the deepest sense, not because they cannot be harmed, but because their essential nature has become too strong to be diminished by external forces. This is the true gift of mastering silent attraction. Not merely the ability to influence others or achieve personal success, but the opportunity to become a positive force in the world, contributing to the healing and elevation of human consciousness through the power of a fully realized life. In the end, those who have walked this path often discover that what they thought was about developing charisma was actually about becoming fully human. And in that becoming, they find not only their own liberation, but their greatest gift to the world.